We're getting a little feedback right off the bat. There we go. Good evening, and thank you for joining us this evening to talk a little bit about the 2025 to 2030 Stormwater Capital Plan for Clark County. We're going to start the presentation right now here at 6:30. And my name is Jeff Schnabel. I am the Stormwater Infrastructure Manager for Clark County Public Works. Really appreciate folks being available to listen in tonight and learn a little bit about what we do. It's not going. Oh, start it again. There we go. So very quickly, for those joining remotely, the meeting will be recorded, and that means that you can always go back and watch it again online as you wish. If you wish to chime in with a question, you can use the chat tool, and that will allow you to log a question that we can answer after the presentation. We will kind of hold questions until after the end of the presentation. I'll try to talk for maybe 20, 25 minutes for you, and then we can go from there into questions. Every time it stops. There we go. That's weird. Oh, now it's working. I just won't touch anything. Okay. Okay, so for our presentation tonight, we're going to do a quick overview of some of the permit requirements, as well as our county policies and goals, some regulatory aspects to what we do for capital. We'll talk a little bit about our 2024 capital program, a recap of what we've done, and then a little about our 2025 to 2030 plan, some of our priorities, project types, where we get our funding, and then a little specific look at 2025, what's coming up in the next year, as well as a couple of example projects, just to give you a little more in-depth view of the types of things that we do. And then we'll wrap up with a little stormwater management plan overview if we have time. So first off, the phase 1 municipal stormwater permit. So Clean Water's activities are governed essentially by both state and federal law. So we are working on elements of the Federal Clean Water Act under the Environmental Protection Agency. And what the EPA does is they delegate authority to the State Department of Ecology to issue what's called a National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Permit, NPDES, municipal stormwater permit, and that regulates the discharges of water that come from the county's stormwater system and go into waters of the state. So there's a lot of requirements, numerous requirements and criteria that we're compelled to comply with. And that compliance effort for Clark County is led by the Clean Water Division and supported by multiple divisions and departments within the county. There's a number of different program components and various requirements there on the right side of this slide. They range widely in all kinds of different aspects, but tonight what we're talking about particularly is stormwater capital projects and stormwater facility maintenance. So our overall policy at the county is to meet those phase 1 permit requirements, but along the way, our goals are to protect and enhance our streams and wetlands, minimize stormwater impacts to receiving waters, streams, lakes, wetlands, and also to maximize public benefits from our county-owned lands. So within the regulatory requirements of the stormwater permit, specifically for capital programming, we have to have a program to manage stormwater for existing developments. So we're trying to prevent or reduce impacts to waters of the state by building projects to take care of stormwater. We're also required to do some stormwater management planning, to do a lot of maintenance and operations of our stormwater assets, and also work on underground injection controls, which are dry wells that put water back into the ground after it's been cleaned. So a real quick summary of what we've done in 2024. We had 7 projects this year that were in our construction phase. The largest was a water quality project on 78th Street over by the county's Heritage Farm property between Northeast 13th and 16th Avenues. The picture on the right is a crew member installing a treatment vault at that location. And then we also had a reforestation project that's currently underway As we speak almost, they're in the middle of planting an area of Salmon Creek Greenway near where Cougar Creek enters Salmon Creek. And then we had 5 stormwater facility repair projects, which are an important component of our program, taking care of the infrastructure that we already have. We had 9 projects in design this year. We're always looking ahead, and you have to get ahead of these projects because it takes several years to take a project from the start to finish. So we're always designing the next projects down the line. And kind of similarly, we're also looking for where the next projects are going to be. So we're looking at our reforestation planning work. Where's our next planting project going to be? And we also continued doing some sub-basin planning where we look for retrofits to the stormwater system in specific areas. This year we did Lalonde Creek, which is a small tributary to Salmon Creek. Our budget this year was about $1.6 million, which is a typical annual budget. Okay, so looking ahead a little bit to the 2025 to 30 project matrix and our priorities for this time period. As I mentioned, repair projects are typically our highest priority. When our existing infrastructure needs some work to get it back into shape, we want to do those things first and foremost to make sure that our systems are working well. It makes more sense to do that than to go out and build a bunch of new stuff if we're not taking care of what we already have. So we do a lot of that. And then we also do a lot of water quality treatment in areas that have little to no stormwater treatment currently. And one of those areas in the county is the lower Salmon Creek area. So we've been focusing for the last 5 or 6 years now on the lower Salmon Creek tributaries. That would be things like Cougar Creek and Suds Creek and Lalonde, like I just mentioned. Another priority is reforestation of our county lands. We had a goal to reforest 30 acres of county property or revegetate with native species, 30 acres of county property in 6 years. We just met that goal very recently. And so we're going into our next 6-year period, and we hope to do another 30 acres or so going forward. And then lastly, we always prioritize property acquisition for stormwater benefit. And to do that, we typically partner with the legacy lands and conservation futures programs at the county to purchase properties, or at least contribute to purchasing properties off of their acquisition list. So the project matrix is just a table of all the projects that we're going to build. We update the budget and the schedule each year. We've added projects this year from that new Lalonde sub-basin retrofit study and a bunch of new repair projects that have come up that we're going to try to start addressing as soon as we can. So this graphic shows kind of a breakdown of the overall project types. There's 32 projects in our 6-year plan and just short of $18 million estimated cost. And you can see there that the water quality and capital repair portions of the pie are kind of the dominant 2 pieces. And so we do a lot of water quality treatment projects and a lot of capital repair projects, but then we also have a couple of efforts to do the property acquisition I mentioned, some reforestation, some stream bank habitat stabilization work, and then we have one large project in that hydrology section, and that is our Heritage Farm wetland restoration project that I'll talk about a little bit more in a moment. So how do we fund these projects? For 25 to 30, to fund that $18 million capital budget, we'll get about $5.5 million from our Clean Water Fund, which is the fund that we use for most of the Clean Water Division work. We have some real estate excise tax 2 or REIT 2 monies that we're going to be utilizing this year, this 6-year period, $7.5 million. We always like to try to get grants when we can, so we're assuming about $1.5 million of grant revenue. And then we also have one nice big loan for $3.4 million for one of our projects, again, that Heritage Farm project. The nice thing about the loan is it's a 20-year repayment at only a 0.4% interest. And then on the right side, if you look at from 2011 until now, just a quick graphic to show that it's about 28%. So getting close to a third of our funding for capital projects comes from state grants or state provisos from the legislature. So that's kind of nice to get that to help offset our costs, and we're hoping to even improve on that going forward. So quick look ahead for 2025. We'll have 5 projects in construction. Our big project is the Heritage Farm wetland restoration that I mentioned. And then we have 3 kind of major water quality projects along Highway 99 and 99th Street corridors. These are places where we do long linear projects to try to treat high traffic roadways that have very, very little treatment, and the water just goes directly into, in this case, places like Cougar Creek and Suds Creek, which are lower Salmon Creek tributaries. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we look at some examples. We've got a new reforestation project. It's going to be done in 2025 as well at the county's Schreiber property on the East Fork Lewis River floodplain, kind of near La Center. And then, of course, 8 more projects in design phase, and our budget much higher this year at $5.4 million, generally because of that Heritage Farm wetland project. And those 2 photos down below are one of our crews at a prior reforestation planting project, and then the one on the left is a stormwater facility retrofit where we just had kind of a big empty lot that was doing very little for stormwater, and we turned it into a stormwater wetland here a couple of years ago with some grant funding help from Department of Ecology. So quick look ahead on the planning aspects for 2025. This next year, we'll be looking at evaluating impacts from our brand new municipal stormwater permit. They are reissued every 5 years, and our new permit came out in August of 2024. So we've got some new requirements, as I mentioned. We'll have to score points based on a metric that the state gives us to make sure that we do enough stormwater management and stormwater capital work. So we're going to be working on determining how many points we're going to get from the plan that we have and see if we need to change anything going forward. We'll continue doing some sub-basin planning similar to Lalonde Creek. We're really trying to take a look at some of the places now that drain into lakes such as Lacamas Lake or Vancouver Lake to try to get a handle on where we can do the most good with our capital program. We'll continue looking for more reforestation planting opportunities, and then we're going to move into some more intensive asset management and long-term capital planning, hopefully in 2025 or 2026. Okay, so that's kind of an overview of the program and where we're at with the 2025 to 30 plan. So we wanted to share just a couple of quick examples of the types of projects that we do. And there's really 3 categories that I'll share with you really quickly. And the first example will be the Heritage Farm wetland restoration. And this is a big wetland restoration project. So one category of projects is sort of a restoration and enhancement type of project. And then I'll go over a couple of other types as well. So the Heritage Farm, this project was part of the Heritage Farm Master Plan in 2020, which calls for enhancing the Cougar Creek watershed and wetland areas. This is at the headwaters of Cougar Creek. And we're going to kind of take what you see there. It's essentially where that light colored line going laterally across the picture is a ditch where old historical wetlands were drained to make room for farming and putting the buildings. We're going to take that and turn it back into a wetland to the extent that we can. So the overview of that project, we're going to convert that ditch back to a series of 8 wetland cells, and that will restore the natural headwater wetland functions of that area. It's about a 6-acre project, and we'll plant about 3,000 native trees and shrubs there when we're done. So the benefits to that type of a project, we're going to increase the groundwater recharge in that area, which will enhance summer stream flow downstream in Cougar Creek and also in Salmon Creek, which is a salmon-bearing stream. So it's good to have that summer stream flow to keep the fish cool. We should also see some improved water clarity because we'll be reducing sediment going into the stream, as well as those summer water temperatures in both Cougar Creek and Salmon Creek downstream. So all of the improvements that we're making up top at the headwaters should translate to some improvements all the way down the system and into Salmon Creek. So this is a little small, but you can see kind of the overview. It's overlaid on that picture that we saw before of the existing ditch, but you can see where we're going to widen it out into these cells that are wetland cells to store water and hopefully create a much better habitat and a much more functional headwater wetland. As far as planting, I mentioned about 3,000 plants will go in the ground out there. So all native species, things like flowering currant, dogwood, salmonberry, Douglas spirea, all of these that are natives to the Northwest. They're great for habitat for both pollinators and birds, various other creatures. And so we're excited to be able to put back a functioning area there. As far as funding, this project got a grant of $500,000 from the Centennial Clean Water Program at Ecology in 2020. And then we also, as I mentioned, got a loan offer from the Department of Ecology for almost $3.5 million that we'll be using for the construction phase. And again, that's a very, very low interest loan. So it's really kind of a good deal all around. But the overall project is one of the largest that we've ever built, a little over $4 million. Okay, second example is kind of more of our bread and butter type of project. This is a project that's called Highway 99 78th to 86th Street water quality. And you can see the purple segment there is the project area going north from 78th Street just to the east of I-5. And that again is Cougar Creek that is coursing through there, that waterway. So we're kind of focusing on that drainage here. This particular project, all of Highway 99 in this area is currently untreated for stormwater. It discharges all of its water directly to Cougar Creek with no treatment. It's about 7.5 acres that we're going to treat. Very high daily traffic load, one of the more heavily traveled roads in the county. So we're going to install treatment vaults and catch basins at 10 locations that will treat sediment and phosphorus. So the benefits of this, we're going to remove phosphorus, which is a nutrient of concern for downstream water bodies. We're going to improve water clarity by reducing the sediment load. And then, of course, the improvements that we make here are going to reduce pollution again downstream. So we are dealing with harmful algal blooms and nutrient enrichment and sedimentation in Salmon Creek, Lake River, and Vancouver Lake downstream. So this is one way that we can utilize our capital planning program to start getting at reducing some of those issues that we see in downstream water bodies. If you look at it from overhead, you can see again on the left-hand side of the screen, that's 78th Street. And then we're going north to the right. There's the 10 locations where we'll have catch basins, and then the rectangle there is a larger vault. And what's in those vaults at those locations are stormwater treatment cartridges. So we've been doing a lot of these types of projects along heavy traffic roadways because there's very little room to build additional stormwater infrastructure off to the side or on a parcel. So what you do is you go underground and you install these vaults and catch basins that we can just put in place right where they were before. But what's inside those vaults, if you look in the upper left, that's a photo of one of the cartridges that goes into those cells and treats the water. Looks a little bit like a oil filter for your car and kind of works similar to that. If you look at the right-hand photo, if you take that plastic shell off, it's filled with a granular media that is in there to filter water as it goes through. So you put the whole thing together, you put several of them into a underground vault or structure like on the left bottom, and then the water comes in. When the water gets in there deep enough, it will turn on a siphon suction in those cartridges, and it will filter the water through that media and send the clean water on out to the stream or back into the drainage system. So we're really excited about using those. There's some new media types that are out now, the stuff that goes inside them that will remove phosphorus from the water. And so that's a real boon to places like this in Lower Salmon Creek, where we're really trying to reduce phosphorus, like I was saying, for some of those downstream issues. Okay, this one's about a $715,000 project, so still a fairly large project. And we did apply for some grant funding for about $590,000 of that through, again, Department of Ecology's Water Quality Combined Funding Program. We have yet to we won't learn about that one until, I guess, June of 2025, whether that grant comes through or not. So, all right. And then the third example, so we have our enhancement projects, wetland projects, and then we have our treatment projects for water quality. And then a third type of project that you see quite a bit in our capital plans are reforestation projects. So this is one that we'll be doing for 2025 called Schreiber Northwest. So you see where the star is there. We're just a little bit south of the center, right on the East Fork Lewis River. And here's a little bit of a close-up on an aerial photo. So the blue arrow over there is showing the area that we're going to plant, and it is, you can see, pretty sparse there on that south bank of the river. So here again, we have county property in the East Fork Lewis River Greenway. We're going to revegetate about 6 acres, kind of where that blue arrow was, and we've already finished with 13 additional acres in that general vicinity. So we're getting to have a pretty large area that's been fully reforested on that south bank, which is pretty exciting. The benefits of this kind of work: we're looking for a diverse riparian native plant community. We're looking for invasive species control. Oftentimes these areas are pretty much dominated by things like reed canary grass, blackberry. So when we go in and do a planting project, we get rid of all the invasives and put in natives to try to take over the area. It will provide much better habitat, water quality improvements because it's stabilizing the soil and the banks, reducing erosion during high water events. So we get a really good bang for the buck with these kind of projects. And again, these are ones that we're trying to get about 30 acres forested every 6 years. And they're quite cost effective too. This 6-acre project will only cost about $130,000. So it's always good to see, because some of them get pretty expensive when they're hard infrastructure. They get to be a little bit more pricey than the ones where we can just plant some trees. So a nice balance in the program. Okay, so that is a really quick spin through of some of what we do for our capital programming. We want to try to go questions right now.
Started stormwater management plan.
Okay.
See if there's any questions.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna turn over the microphone to Eric Lambert here, and Eric's going to talk a little bit about our stormwater management program overview, and then we can come back around and take questions on either part. Eric?
Okay, thank you, Jeff. My name is Eric Lambert. I'm the Clean Water Outreach Specialist for Clark County Public Works. And I'm going to talk about our stormwater management plan. And we actually call this, and I'll be referring to this for the rest of the presentation, as the SWAMP. And this is a document that we have each year, we produce each year, and it's required under our permit, our NPDES permit that Jeff referred to earlier. And it basically describes how Clark County manages our stormwater through that permit, and also details our efforts to protect water resources. It's divided into sections that pretty much align with our NPDES permit and the requirements in that. And another key part about this is that feedback is accepted at any time on any part. It is about 120 pages, so I hope to be able to describe some different sections of it here, because we don't expect anyone to read the whole entire thing, really just to be able to find the part that you're most interested in and comment and provide feedback however you wish. So again, as I mentioned, this is all pertaining to our NPDES compliance requirements. And the first part of the SWAMP is our legal authority and regulations. This is our codes, are the permits, and basically what we need in place as a county to meet these requirements. The second part is inventory and mapping. And this is a permit requirement. It's also a really important part of meeting the other requirements in their NPDES permit, whether it be pollution prevention or operations and maintenance or our monitoring program. So having our inventory of our stormwater infrastructure mapped out in a GIS system, that's what this section describes. And then operations and maintenance, this is to our own stormwater infrastructure, and it also covers a little bit about how we manage runoff coming off of our roads and some of our other properties. The other section here is detecting and reducing pollutants. This refers to what we call source control or pollution prevention assistance, and IDDE, that's illicit discharge detection and elimination. And so this is visiting businesses, working with businesses to prevent pollution, and also identifying illicit connections. And if there is a illicit connection, to make sure that that gets fixed. The next section we have is expanding and improving infrastructure. So this is a lot of what Jeff was speaking about earlier, that capital planning, finding areas that we can improve our drainage or improve the way that we manage stormwater through our infrastructure. And the other section is outreach, outreach education and public involvement. And this is a piece of that public involvement. And you providing feedback is a way that you can be involved as a member of the public. And so we have a number of different audiences that we reach out to and provide education to on a number of different topics that are in our NPDES permit, including different types of programs and campaigns that we're required to run and implement. Coordination and administration. So we are required to partner and coordinate with neighboring jurisdictions and other local governments, as well as agencies in our region. We do this sometimes where our storm sewer systems will meet up and we might share a pipe or share some different areas. And so there's some coordination requirements there. And this talks about that, some of those planning activities. And finally, we have our monitoring and assessment activities. This really is an important piece, not only for meeting our NPDES permit requirements, but also helping to understand the health of our streams and to understand where we want to direct priorities and really focus some of our efforts while we're meeting our permit in other ways. And so, as I mentioned before, you can provide feedback at any time about any part of it. And I mentioned earlier that it is about a 120-page document, which can be a lot to get through. But fortunately, if you click on this QR code here or use your phone to use that QR code and go to that website, you can find summaries of each section. So I encourage you to check that out. And if there's a section that speaks to you or that you'd like to learn more about, you can also find the complete SWAMP on that website. And if you have a comment or some feedback, you can provide that to the email address rod.swanson@clark.wa.gov below. So I think we'll have, if you have any questions about that or the capital presentation that Jeff just gave, we can take those now.
Yeah, we do have one question online for Jeff. It is going to be, do the vault cartridges get serviced and how often?
Yeah, that's a great question. They do. And the way we figure out how often is one of our permit requirements is that every year, all of our treatment and flow control facilities out there in the county are required to be inspected for function. And so as part of that, each of these systems that has an underground cartridge in it gets inspected, and there are ways to tell when that cartridge has reached its capacity. And once it does, we come in, remove the spent cartridges, they go back to the factory and are recharged with new media. They take out the old stuff, put in the new stuff, and then we install brand new fresh cartridges. So most of our cartridges get replaced about every 3 years or so, but it does vary a little bit depending on the pollution load where they are. So those ones that we were talking about in the capital plan just a bit ago, they're pretty frequent. Every couple of years we need to replace those because of that high traffic load and that high sediment load coming off those bigger roadways. But in a subdivision, sometimes they'll last 4 or 5 years before we need to replace them. So good question. Okay. All right, I guess we're not seeing any additional questions, so we'll let you go. And thank you so much for joining us tonight and spending just a little bit of time to talk about the stormwater management program and our capital planning efforts. This will be online within a short period of time, within 10 days or so. And we thank you again for being a part of it. Good night.